when staying ahead of your game is your intention, preparing you for that is our aim without any doubt. Welcome to your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. This is BISNOMICS. Artificial intelligence. Well, what if our machines get smart enough to think like humans? Can it be helpful to our day-to-day life? Will business decision-making improve? Is artificial intelligence that thing that they show in the movies with smart robotics moving about, sometimes turning evil? Or has it got already embedded into the work we do, the software systems we use, the daily applications which are there, such as your vehicle and the home appliances? Artificial intelligence is said to be adding more than $15 trillion to the global economy by 2030. Not any kind of child's play anymore. It has moved on from the research forums and various colloquiums into mainstream business. Today, we will be discussing about to what extent is AI really assisting business, what pitfalls should we avoid, and most importantly, what is the situation of AI in Sri Lanka. And joining me for this very insightful discussion is none other than Dr. Romesh Ranawana, founder, CEO of Enterprise Machine Learning. Dr. Romesh, welcome to BISNOMICS.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
It's an interesting topic. The world is talking about it, the good and the bad. Let's use your intelligence and demystify artificial intelligence.
We shall. I look forward to it.
Doctor, first up, what exactly is artificial intelligence? Because I honestly feel that with like with anything in technology, this word AI is today being used to describe things that is both AI as well as not so AI. So let's demystify that first. What exactly is artificial intelligence?
That's right. And I'll start with, it's just the fact that the name is a bit of a misnomer. The name came out in the 1950s when they started building computers for the first time. And they envisioned that, if a computer could solve a calculation in, something that used to take hours, you could do it in a few minutes. They just thought, with this level of progression, in a few years' time, we are going to have computers that can think. And
think like humans.
Think like humans.
Yes.
And it was actually at that time that they coined this term, because at the time they defined a few generations of computers, the evolution of computers, the maturity model. And they thought, in another 30, 40 years, we'll have these computers who can think like people. And they even devised these tests called the Turing Test.
The famous Alan Turing test.
So
where they give the puzzle and they try to understand whether the computer is able to solve it faster.
Exactly.
And later, I believe they even had computers that can get smart enough to deliberately make a few mistakes to let the testing party think that that's a human and not the computer.
Exactly. And the idea is that you have a human in the middle.
Yes.
And you have a computer on one side and another human on the other side.
Yes.
And the person in the middle doesn't know
Yes.
which is the computer or not. And at the end of 30, 40 minutes of questioning, if the person in the middle can't say which one is the computer or this thing, they define that as artificial intelligence.
For sure.
But this definition came up a long time ago. And we have not reached any of that level of maturity that they were expecting at the time.
Just like how 2020 was supposed to be the year
Exactly.
of flying cars
Exactly.
and autonomous driving, but what we have is cab drivers saying, where should I turn to?
Exactly. This was just a big, it was excitement. It was a lot of science fiction novels coming out at the time. Right. Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, Steven Spielberg. There were lots of talk about it. So they devised this idea that you'll have intelligent machines who can think and act like people.
Correct. Convince another human that they are a human.
That they are a human. But the way I look at it as a practitioner, there are AIs. I look at it different. And the way you look at AI. I was reading a book recently. They classify perception of AI in 4 categories. What you have is first are the people who haven't heard of AI, and that category of people is getting smaller and smaller with films and what's going on in media. It's people who have no idea about it. Then we have the second category of people who get all their information from the media. What's going on in hype, and they're talking about hyper-intelligent machines.
They read the headlines sometimes.
They read the headlines. So they actually have a very different view of what AI can do. The third level is AI practitioners, people who
Such as
use,
yourself.
such as myself, people who use AI. And for us, even though it's called AI, for me, I haven't called it AI in a long time. I call it machine learning. And for me, machine learning is an algorithm which is able to solve some mathematical problems. It's a prediction system.
And it can also learn by itself.
It can learn by itself. It can learn from data, but it's basically a prediction system. And for me, it's about how to use this one algorithm and apply it to different problems. So that's the third category. And the fourth category are people who actually build new AI systems. The scientists, and that's a really small amount of people around the world, and they just look at it as, once again, a mathematical problem. But so it's all about if you look at the fundamentals of AI, it's really about an algorithm which can learn from data. And the big difference is this: normal technology runs on computers. Now it runs on software, and software traditionally has to be written by a program.
Correct.
So somebody has to sit down and say, this is the problem, when this happens, do this, when this happens, do this, and you devise what's called an algorithm.
Correct.
And then you got to translate that into programming code. And that's usually how all technology is written. The reason that AI changed this game is that you no longer need to write this software block where you just show some data and say, when you send this in, you got to send this out.
Correct.
And
then it can develop by itself.
Exactly. The algorithm is able to map those two sides together.
Understood.
And get that going.
Doctor,
Yeah?
now I saw a very interesting application recently that in Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, they feed pictures of certain rocks or certain surfaces and where they find oil from. And there is a machine that can analyze it, understand what a surface that has oil underneath it looks like, and then it's also then able to predict what are the other possible surfaces.
That's right.
Under which there might be oil, so that they know where to drill and they don't go drilling everywhere. I mean, this is very fascinating. My question is, like that, what are the business applications of AI? Because we see this being applied in many cases. Some people even say that even our normal word processor understanding that we are typing some kind of a letter and suggesting words, that's also a part of AI. But what are the real game changers? We hear about AI being combined with Internet of Things and AI being combined with sometimes some of this data analysis. What are the business applications of AI and what are the game changers?
There are a number, and I'll just go back and link it to digitization. Now, the big difference which happened with digitization was that all the information in a company was digitized, and then you were able to process it, store it, analyze it faster. And and this is a topic you know very well, over the 90s, the early 2000s, there was a big transition towards...
They call it automation or digitization.
Digitization.
Yes.
And there, the idea was that data was structured. You define these databases and you enter data in a certain structure.
That was the era where they were transforming from the paper-based world to the computer world.
And there you moved on to a digital structured mechanism.
Correct.
And that was a game changer. But the big problem with that, the big drawback with that, was that it was still unable to process what's called unstructured data.
Correct.
Unstructured data is speech, video, images, stuff like the written reports, handwritten reports. Those systems are still unable to process that type of data.
Which is the majority of the data.
It allows unstructured data to be structured, where you can take images, video, audio, and then convert that into structured formats, where you can still put it into an Excel sheet, into a table, and search and query and do that type of thing. So that's the first game changer, which means that you now have more data flowing to you in a structured format, and that allows you to build things like dashboards, which allow you to that in the analytic world that's called the descriptive stage, where you have all your data flowing in. Yes. And you're able to see what the current status is in front of you in a dashboard.
Correct.
So that's stage one. And a lot of companies that I've seen in Sri Lanka, and even you've been talking about this, is companies who are working very actively on getting to that descriptive stage, where they can do their own analytics, do dashboards and stuff. Correct. Then the second stage is what a lot of companies now are trying to move on to. It's what's called the predictive stage, where when you
can predict the future.
Exactly. Once you have that stage of data, then you can predict how that data is going to change over time. and that's going
And that prediction will happen with a proper AI engine.
with the proper AI engine and good data.
Correct.
And then the third evolution of that, which is where companies like Amazon and Google have got to, is what's called the prescriptive stage. Where now the big problem with the predictive stage is you and I still need to ask a question
Yes.
to say, I need to know how this is going to work
Yes.
over time. But the big drawback of that is that the bottleneck is that person asking the question.
If we don't ask the right questions, you won't get the right answer.
You won't get the right answer.
End of the day, computers are GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. I mean, it all depends on, so if you don't ask the correct questions, analytics systems is useless, right? I mean, honestly, it's just data in front of you.
Correct.
So prescriptive stage is where once you build your predictive algorithms, you have a suite of algorithms, and then you have some software on the background which will evaluate different questions and scenarios. So what these systems do is they go and predict, say you're predicting churn, and you don't know why this churn is happening, and you don't know what you need to do to handle it. So you have lots of options. Do I increase my marketing in Colombo? Do I increase my marketing in Candy? Do I increase my marketing in Gaul? Do I target the 20 to 30 crowd and do a Facebook campaign on them? So what prescriptive does is it asks those questions for you, simulates that, and gives you an answer saying, this is probably the best thing you should do at this time to get to that ROI that you want. So it's like a doctor's prescription.
Correct.
So that's the final evolution of analytics, but it takes a long time to get to that point.
So that's where AI you see playing a massive role, especially in analysis, understanding, not only answering questions asked, but asking the right questions and coming up with the right answers.
That's right.
Now, Doctor, do you see AI becoming a key business skill for business professionals? Because as you very correctly said, we don't have to any longer write coding for these systems. And I remember as a computer science graduate, when we used to do our final year projects, those developing AI systems, they'll sit near a computer the entire last semester, code until their hairs are growing up to their knees and they have absolutely no other life. Today, we speak about AI building studios. For example, the IBM Watson, just drag and drop a few components and voila, you have your system with you. So do you see future business professionals, maybe a finance manager, marketing manager, needing to be able to, drag, drop a few components, get that AI model going that helps their decision making?
Absolutely. And that is going to be the key to transformation. I mean, we live in a world where companies are forced to diversify. They're forced to cut their costs. They're forced to optimize their processes.
And rethink the HR strategies they have.
Rethink the HR strategies. And there's no way around, especially with the scale of operations that these companies do. I mean, it's gone are the days where you start a company to run in only Candy, for example. When you start a company to try and sell to the whole world. And in that situation, you're talking so much data coming in, so much information coming in, so much happening at the same time, from your internet marketing to Facebook marketing to sales to logistics. There's just no way to physically manage that type of things without using digital tools. So that digital platform is now a given, and as you know, with digitization, that's a given. But then on the next stage, it all depends on what your competitors are doing. If your competitors are using those three levels of analytics that we talked about, they're going to be making decisions faster, they're going to be reacting to things faster, they're going to be much more flexible, they're going to be agile. And chances are that if you don't keep up with that that level of development, that level of skill, you're going to fall behind your competitors. So and that is what a lot of the companies have now realized, that you can no longer bring the AI skills to a central core and get that team to manage the analytics for the company. Because the people at the central core, just like we talked about earlier, don't know what questions to ask. It's those people at the edge in the business units who know what questions they should be asking. So the analytics has to be eventually driven by the people who run their business units.
For sure.
And I have this I have this saying where I'm saying, I've been a CTO all my life, and my job as a CTO is always to select technology, bring technology in, and how to propagate it. But now everybody in a company needs to be a CTO, because if you're an accountant, you're not going to get the CTO to pick your accounting system.
There's fintech now. You need to know how to work with the technology.
Exactly. And you don't want your CTO to come and tell you, I want you to buy this accounting system. The accountant needs to go and say, I want this system because of this reason.
Well, AI seems to be a game changer, but what's the impact on your budget? Let's talk about that on the other side of this short break. This is BISNOMICS. Welcome back to BISNOMICS, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. I'm Tarandu Amarasekara. Our focus today is on artificial intelligence. What a game changer it has been in the world of business. But how does it apply to your area of work? And what is the scenario of AI in Sri Lanka? And for this discussion, joining us is a very special guest, Dr. Romesh Ranawana. Dr. Romesh, now, with regard to technology, there is a very common belief among lots of business decision makers that anything that sounds too high-tech, anything that sounds too effective, too efficient, usually comes with a very high initial cost. It's going to, acquire a bigger part of your tech budget for the whole year, and so on. How expensive is AI adoption into an organization?
It can be expensive, but the good news is that it is significantly cheaper than what it was. And I'll tell you a story. When I wanted to do my PhD, I wanted to do a PhD in artificial intelligence. But then to do artificial intelligence, you need the software tools, you need the computers, you need the reference material to be able to do that. And when I did my PhD back in 2002-03, when I started, there was no facilities whatsoever to do this in Sri Lanka. So at that time, I had to go to a university like universities in the UK, the top universities in the world, to be able to, number one, have access to the resources, the computing power I need for AI, access to the data, and also to the learning resources. And there were very few places in the world where I could get that access to.
Yes.
But over the last 15 years, there's been a tremendous democratization of the use of AI.
Doctor, if I'm not mistaken, what you just mentioned, good data, good systems.
Absolutely.
Today we can access it from our homes.
Exactly. It's about, cloud computing has been a game changer, because now we have access to computing resources from my phone. And also another big part has been the development of specialized computers for machine learning. No longer do you use a normal Intel Core i7, or you use a specialized machine learning training chip, which allows you to train much faster, cheaper, using less electricity. So that's been a huge game changer. And now we are at a level where, a student who wants to learn AI doesn't need to go to the UK or the US to do it. They just load up what's called a Jupyter notebook on Google, and they can write code, and they can write a pretty advanced program even sitting on their phone at home. So the transition cost is coming down, especially for learning, but there is still, especially on a Sri Lankan context, computing power is still a bit expensive.
Yes.
On the UK, when you look at Western price points, it's not so bad, but on a Sri Lankan price point, Sri Lankan companies still struggle, because you need very powerful computing power to be able to train these models.
Understood. And also when it comes to the application, I believe it's all about the technology you choose, isn't it? Because
That's right.
companies, sometimes they have this all-out approach where they will end up busting all their money on something like AI, and sometimes they don't even check whether they need it or not. But
Absolutely.
Today, I believe AI solutions can be customized and obtained to match a business.
Absolutely. And the big point to remember here is that just transformation, AI transformation, analytic transformation on its own is of no value. You just go back to the digital transformation age. Just converting your whole company to digital only made a small change. The big change came when the staff's mindset, the people working on the mindset, learned to think digital and operate digitally. So I think where a lot of companies are now struggling is to do that transformational change in the staff, getting them to think in a different way, where you're not just following the process, but like I said, you ask questions.
Correct.
And you have this data platform where you can have those questions answered. So I think the big struggle for a lot of companies now is that mindset change.
Correct.
And those who don't do both in parallel, usually they don't get those results, and they get disappointed in the analytics programs.
Doctor, one category of people you mentioned who learns about AI, those who see the movies and all and learn.
Yes.
Now, let's be very honest here. Most of the movies which we've seen about AI tends to show the evil side of AI.
That's right.
Starting from the Terminator.
That's right.
Right? Now, people have this worry, will AI take over human intelligence? We are talking about a possible future where there might be like an AI-based doctor who is doing surgeries. How far away are we from a future like that? And is there any chance that AI will take over human intelligence? For a long time, the defining logic was that humans are programming AI, so AI will always be limited by human intelligence. But
right.
as you very correctly said, with machine learning, the machines can learn faster and better than humans without the distractions. So What kind of a future are we seeing here?
I mean, we are a long way away from that. As a practitioner, I know that AI can do amazing things, but what AI can do is do one thing very well. That world of what's called artificial general intelligence, that's an AI which can, you just put it out there and it learns on its own. That technology doesn't exist
And
yet.
this is also, I believe, a branch of what we call as this deep learning.
Deep learning, people call it the singularity.
Okay.
Where you have this explosion of intelligence. What they say is, if a machine reaches the intelligence of a human, it'll bypass that human really fast after that. But the thing is, we are not there yet. There's a lot of work going on, but we are still years and years, decades away from building what's called an artificial general intelligence. But on the other hand, we will be building AI who are very good at a particular task. And AI it's just like any other technology. Technology can be used for good and bad.
Absolutely.
And
Just like a knife.
Just like a knife.
Use it to cut apples and cheese.
That's right.
At the same time, use it to harm a human.
That's right. And you don't ban knives and that's where the regulation comes in. So it's very important for countries to regulate how AI is used, what type of applications it can be used. But it's just one of these technologies that's such a game changer for business, for medicine, for logistics, you name it. It's such a game changer. It cannot be avoided, but it has to be controlled.
Understood. Now, you said we are a long way off from general AI intelligence or our general intelligence using AI.
Yeah.
So, do you think Sophia would agree with you on that? The world's first AI human being.
Those are, they're still very gimmicky. They are, those type of systems are more proof of concepts.
Correct. Again, just for the enlightenment of our viewers who are watching the show, Sophia is the world's first artificial intelligence-based human. She, I believe, got the citizenship from Saudi Arabia, and you can always search about these things online, and it looks very humanish, but as you said, it's a certain amount of gimmickies involved.
That's right. But these are very, very important steps.
Correct.
Because they show the capacity of the systems.
But it can be.
That's right. And there's going to be no single AI that can do all this. It's a combination of a lot of systems that will have to be combined together to be able to bring that level of intelligence.
Dr. Romesh, you mentioned a very important point there. You said the day that artificial intelligence can come to the level of human intelligence and surpass it is a long way off. But I have a little worry here. Now, we hear about so many organizations such as Facebook, Google, using AI to kind of model our human behavior. The algorithms are used to keep showing us the videos we like to see, the content we like to see.
That's right.
And that's why you kind of sometimes take YouTube just to watch one video, but you end up watching about 27 videos later on.
That's right.
And the concern here is not the point where artificial intelligence matches human intelligence, but the part where artificial intelligence kind of overtakes human weakness. Because today, I believe, AI systems have got smart enough to figure out how to exploit human weaknesses. Are we seeing artificial intelligence dark side at play through all these algorithm-driven social media?
To a certain extent, yes. And the main reason for that is that technology has always been so far ahead of regulation. Technology moves very fast, but regulation moves slowly. But fortunately, now with the GDPR coming in Europe and the
General Data Protection Regulation,
General Data, and then the CCPA in California, we've got these regulations coming in, which have now understood this problem, and they are directly dealing with this. Working on anonymization, pseudonymization of data, and stuff like that. So this is being rectified. But you're absolutely right. They are being used for these nefarious purposes. But once again, if there is no regulation to tell them that you shouldn't do this, they're not. They're going to keep doing it. And on the other hand, there is a big social pressure building up against this stuff as well. Security, privacy is now, people are understanding the importance of that. So I think those two forces are converging, and there will be better control of this use of these technologies.
Dr. Romesh, if we take some of the very specific business domains, for example, let's take healthcare sector. Now, in the healthcare sector, how do you see AI getting integrated to the work that we do? Your thoughts?
It's mainly going to be with assistive technology.
Assistive technology.
It's what are called smart assistants. These assistants,
like Iron Man's Jarvis.
Exactly. It's basically an algorithm that can look at a CT scan and say, I think there's a dot here, a dot there, or a small problem here. I think it could be this. But it's that level of intuition that can be very, very useful. I mean, I was talking to a cancer specialist recently, and they said, if you're a pathologist, you spend 8 hours a day looking at those slides. You're on that microscope looking at it all day, and it's like finding a cancer cell on a slide. It's like finding a patch of dead grass on a rugby field. You got to take a microscope and look at it around.
Yes.
So it depends on how good that doctor is, how bored he or she is, how much time he has. So it's a big problem, and to train a good pathologist usually takes 20 to 25 years to get to that core experience level. But now with AI, you can build a system that can highlight stuff for you, where you don't have to still wait for that 25 years to get to that level of experience. But it'll assist you with looking at 1,000 CT scans at once and start to highlight those areas, so you don't have to search through that entire football field, but you just directly go and look at that area and make that call. So in things like medicine, it's very unlikely that technology will replace the doctor, but it will augment the work of the doctor. It will help doctors much more because AI is good at big data. It can look at a million CT scans, remember those million CT scans, but the doctor is not going to remember all million and know exactly what happened on those. So it's a way to assist the doctor, but I don't see AI stepping in and replacing doctors. I don't think that's going to happen.
Contrary to the normal thinking among a lot of people. So as you said, AI's best chance or best input and the support will be as assistive technology.
It is. And it's the same even in like finance and investment. I was reading a report recently. There are 120 startups who are building robotic assistants for investors now in Europe.
And we have this concept of robotic advisory.
Exactly.
Like, for example, all this Vanguard, Betterment, Wealthfront, and these companies. I recently read that the benefit is that they are able to have more assets under management. And there is around, even in this, as we speak now, there is about 120 to 130 billion dollars worth assets simply managed by AI algorithms. I mean, the fact that so many people are trusting an AI algorithm to look after their money, that is a good testament to AI.
Absolutely, and that's exactly it. I mean, you got to understand what technology is good at and what humans are good at. There's no point the two competing against each other. Machines are good at analyzing big data, coming up with analysis on big data, whereas humans are, they're experienced, they've got intuition, they've got learning, and your final solution is going to be where you bring together the best of both worlds.
Understood. As you always say, humans may not be perfect, but we all are limited edition.
That's right.
But we are going to come back into more discussion, especially with regard to AI in Sri Lanka.
Of course.
The level of AI adoption in Sri Lanka and the way forward. Let's talk about that on the other side of this short break. This is BISNOMICS. Welcome back to BISNOMICS. I'm Ranawana. We are focusing on artificial intelligence, and we are in conversation with Dr. Romesh Ranawana. Dr. Romesh, now talking about the AI talent pool in Sri Lanka, now we always hear these two opposing rallying cries from two different camps with regard to tech and talent. The tech company owners and the tech entrepreneurs are saying we can't find the talent, we need to get talent from overseas. Whereas the local talent is saying, no, there's plenty of talent, there's a plethora of talent. With regard to AI, can we be happy with the talent pool available in Sri Lanka?
Not really. Sri Lanka has... We have a lot of interest in AI. We did a recent study of the Sri Lankan universities, of the computer science universities, and we found that about 60 to 70% of students who were doing their final year project had some sort of AI component in their projects. But the problem here is that they all approach AI as an academic subject, as a research subject where you're just trying to prove a concept. Whereas,
rather than the application and the pragmatic approach.
Exactly. And the big shift in the world now is where they move from academic AI into production grade AI, where AI is now considered an engineering discipline and no longer an academic discipline. So, I mean, me as somebody who works in the industry, that actual AI part, that AI model that we build of a production grade system, that AI model constitutes only about 5% of that whole system. So this is where the companies are struggling to take these guys. And I know a lot of Sri Lankan companies have started AI initiatives, but those initiatives have not got beyond an initial internal prototype or a proof of concept. It doesn't really go on into their workflows. And that is because we have a severe lack of experienced AI engineers, both on the university side where we don't have those training programs, and also there's only a handful of corporates in Sri Lanka who have taken an AI into production grade. So we lack that experience. So that's the problem. Even I'm really thinking about. We've been talking to a couple of universities in Sri Lanka, and they're hoping to introduce a new couple of AI engineering courses next year. But that'll be introduced next year. The kids will pass out in 4 years' time.
Exactly, yes.
It's not a quick solution.
Absolutely.
So we are, at the moment, this is where the companies are struggling. They hire these guys who know AI, but they're struggling to integrate it with their primary systems.
Dr. Romesh, with regard to further AI adoption among Sri Lankan businesses, what needs to be done, especially maybe from a policy side, a policy angle? What kind of government policies do you think will help better AI adoption in Sri Lanka among the business community?
I mean, unfortunately, in Sri Lanka up to now, the conversation around AI has been extremely limited. There is some work now that SLASCOM has taken up, but that's more through the private sector that we are trying to reignite this. But if you look around the world, there are so many countries now who have introduced AI policies, and probably one of the most wide-reaching policies was introduced just 3 weeks ago by the UK government, where they launched their new AI policy, and they've set up a policy for the next 30 years. It's a policy that ranges over which plans for the next 30 years, and they've broken it into three areas where the government has to invest in the long-term needs of the ecosystem. And then they had to make sure that AI benefits all the sectors and regions within the country and AI governance. And for that, they've opened up new visa regimes to attract the best AI talent around the world. They're talking about the cost of processing, the top of computing power, the lack of expertise, and they're trying to create programs to help startups on that front. Another big problem in Sri Lanka is also the lack of data, the lack of government data, national data that startups can use to build their AI systems. We just don't have enough data. The government is not allowing enough data to come out. But the UK has set up this initiative where they're going to make all the data available, most of the data available, but not just available, they're going to make it available in an AI-ready format so that you can just load it into an AI system and run it. And then also look at how you can foster greater international collaboration, because we understand we are a bit behind. We need to get help from other people. If not, we'll always be behind. We need to supercharge it a bit. But I mean, one thing that Sri Lanka does have is our diaspora network, and there are some top machine learning AI people working in the top companies right around the world, right from Google, Microsoft, NASA, Boeing, you name it.
Who are Sri
Lankan. So I think something that we can do is to try and get some of those people. Maybe they won't move back, but at least assist us with getting some of these policies in place.
Interesting thoughts there. Doctor, for any young student who is studying artificial intelligence, for any young student who is planning to start studying and following it, or maybe already following artificial intelligence related studies, and who is planning to enter this industry, what is your advice to them? What kind of career opportunities are there? For example, if you do software engineering, you can maybe come in as a junior programmer and then senior programmer and project manager. What kind of a career path are we looking at in AI?
I mean, it goes back to what I told a little while ago, which is production grade engineering. And it's a new field of machine learning that's called ML Ops. It's called machine learning operations. And this is I'm sure you heard of this in the software engineering field, what's called continuous integration and continuous development.
Yes.
Where you develop and it's deployed into your environment immediately with automated testing and all that. And that's the principle that's coming into machine learning as well now, where you build these models, but these models will learn and develop and retrain themselves over time. I mean, just take an example in apparel. Let's say you build a prediction algorithm. When you're shopping on a website, it tells you what other things you might be interested in. But in apparel, the moment you go from summer to autumn, if you still predict those summer clothes, nobody's going to buy.
Correct.
So that means the AI then needs to be when that shift happens, the AI needs to be retrained so that the same person
For the new context.
same context, but the input data is still going to be the same person. And how to retrain it. So these systems have to be built in a way that they are continuously trained and learning on their own and fully integrated with the larger system. So it's very important to get a firm understanding and background in that AI engineering aspect of things. And I think that's key.
And apart from the technical skill, what other soft skills do you think? They now say not to use the word soft skill, but to call it the human skills.
Yeah.
So AI, artificial intelligence, but I believe some human skills are still vital.
I mean, it's just like software engineering as well. You can be a pure programmer who builds an algorithm, but with AI, you got to solve a business problem. If you start something with wanting to use a particular technology and excitement on the technology, 9 out of 10 times you're going to fail. You got to start with a business problem, and it's that mindset change that we were talking about earlier. Even the developers need to have that, where AI needs to be thought of as a tool to solve a problem or address a question, rather than prove that you have capacity in something. So that mindset shift, I know it does. I mean, for you coming from business background, that's how you think anyway.
For sure.
But that's not how developers think. And getting that mindset change, thinking like somebody who comes from business background, I think is key for the AI and business AI analytics space as well.
And for any business owner who is watching this show right now, who is thinking, okay, look, you know what? Okay, fine. AI seems to be a game changer. Let's get AI on board into our company. What are the pitfalls they should avoid? Because if they end up busting all their money on a wrong solution, later they will blame the technology. That's what happens.
That's right.
So what are the pitfalls that a business owner, business decision maker should avoid when bringing in artificial intelligence into their business?
I mean, first thing is you can't transform overnight. It's like a digital transformation. Just because you buy a system and put it in there, it's not going to work. You need to invest in good people to run your programs, to build your programs. And then the really important one is your organizational mindset shift. If your staff don't start to think differently, think on how you can use these tools, you're going to fail. And really the important thing is digital transformation, AI transformation takes time. You got to have patience, because every company's data is different. What companies do, the operation environment is different. So you got to give time for the organization to understand its needs and take time. And if you set like a 6-month deadline and say, right, if I don't see 10% improvement in 6 months, you're fired. That never
AI
works.
doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like it. Normally takes years, for you to understand your data, set up the data platform, and go through that, what I talked about, the descriptive, prediction and the prescriptive stage. And you start with descriptive, but if you want to go to prescriptive straight off, you're going to fail.
And for some of the current national issues which we see, for example, we are having so much of issues in so many sectors of our economy. Do you see AI having the possibility of providing some solutions?
Yes, but our data is not integrated. The data
Can you
is too
explain that problem a little bit, Doctor?
So let's say you're trying. Let's say, for example, now take the kidney disease problem that we have in Sri Lanka.
Chronic kidney disease.
Chronic kidney disease problem. And I was talking to several AI researchers who said, okay, let's sit down and let's build some machine learning models and figure out why this is happening, because they still don't really understand the root cause of this problem. And then, we went out and dug around, and we found that there's not a single centralized kidney database in the country. Nothing. It's all paper reports in Polonara Hospital, another hospital that's there. So if I was to start a project like that under AI, I would first have to spend 2 years digitizing all that data. So, and that's the problem. So, I mean, for AI and machine learning to work, you need data. You need good data, quality data, clean data. And if the data is not available, it's going to be very hard to take it to that next step.
Fully understood. Dr. Romesh Ranawana, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure hosting you on the program, and keep up the good work you're doing, and may you be able to enrich the Sri Lankan business community with more insights on artificial intelligence. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much, Thaindu, and it's wonderful, this program you're doing. I hope you have more programs like this, because it's very important for awareness to be created on what this, and break some of this hype, which I think you're doing a magnificent job on.
Compliments to my team.
Thank you.
The role of artificial intelligence in the world of business. This was our focus today on BISNOMICS. And if you were keenly following this, you would have realized that there is so much of potential that this game-changing technology can really bring in for your organization. It can be a game changer. It can be one of those technologies which enables you to serve your customers better, but it starts with the right data. It starts with identifying what exact problems can AI solve for your organization. And no matter what business you may be in, we hope that this awareness of AI will help you to take your game to the next level with enhanced artificial intelligence. I'm Tharandu Amrasekhar, and I will see you with the next episode. This is BISNOMICS.